So first, let me add some value to this. I mean, since I'm opening, I better do it in style, right? Good morning, Finland. Are you ready for 2 sessions of me? You're still laughing now, so it must be a good thing, right? So I can say that I can do this away. And I open up with my slide deck now. Here we are. Practicalities. So I can close this one off. So, here we are. The Azure 360 State of the World address. So, before I start introducing myself, maybe why this kind of little title? Well, Azure is now around, what, 10 years? Something-ish? Yeah? We've seen it change. And there's a lot of new stuff coming up. And since I'm working on the inside now, I see more good stuff coming up, even for you IT pros, because IT pros are always dear to me. The first broad session that I ever did was Azure for IT pros, and it was in the days when we still had fast services like cloud services, and you know, you guys, you really had a tough road ahead. No longer. All the goodness that is coming is your cup of tea. So, so I will be addressing all the new things that came over, have a little overview of what's there. And please, I know it's Finland. I know you guys are quiet. A little bit, Belgians and Finns are a little bit the same, according to a little book. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt. I will not answer anyway, so, okay? All right, but before I start off with the serious thing, let me first make an ass out of myself.
Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time.
So if you keep, no, I promised myself and you in silence that I wouldn't sing live. I did that once, and yeah, people really didn't like that apparently. So enough about making an idiot out of myself. I'm Mike Martin. I'm a technical evangelist for the Western European ISVs, so the independent software vendors. So if any of you are independent software vendors or builders, let's talk during the networking thing too, so that way we can connect too. Just to get together. I'm an ex-MVP, so not long-lasting like Timu said. I still am a user group lead in Belgium for the Belgian counterpart of the, what was it again here in Sweden? Finland Azure User Group. I thought you had an abbreviation too, but apparently not. FOG, yeah, that was it. So if you want to reach out and if you want to see more singing, you can follow me on Twitter, and there's some leads there. Just enough about me. So Azure is not only cloud, it's omnipresent. And as an IT pro, that means you can have Azure, whether it's really in the clouds, whether it's on a ship, as our dear friend Carl already mentioned, by means of Stack. Any Stack users here?
Just me. Good.
Okay, so there's one guy actually giving in that he's a Stack user. So, but also you can run nowadays Azure on edge devices. I mean, we have the opportunity to run functions on IoT devices, stuff like that. Maybe that's a little bit far off, but if you look at the IT perspective of it, you need to manage those devices. You need to easily deploy all these devices and safeguard them and all these things. And we try to make it as simple as possible for you guys. If we don't, well, then shoot me. I'm sorry, I don't work in the product group. I only evangelize the damn thing. But they really try their best. So if ever you have doubts or questions, step up, we're open to it, and we can talk about all these things. So it's also a little bit of therapy for those who need, especially you, because since you're in the stack thing. We've been growing since the beginning of days. We started off with a couple of regions. Today we are 54 regions big. 54 data center regions, paired or unpaired, depending on where you're looking at. We have nowadays more capabilities in networking than any other provider of cloud and infrastructure. If you look at the number of wires that we put up for intercontinental networking, undersea cables, we have data centers that we are now putting into the sea. We had Project Natic, which is was a small container that we put into the ocean, and we've sealed it off completely. Nowadays we have larger containers we're testing actually in Scotland. Very huge, and I think they have an array. Good morning. Good morning, good morning. So here's my co-presenter, ladies and gentlemen. Kidding, just grab a seat. Having all these capabilities at hand, that means that we can expand more and more and more. Most of the data centers that we are today are generations filling up after each other with newer technologies, with higher capable computing, with larger compute sizes that we have in hardware and provisioning to you as in VMs and compute power for your other services. So a little bit the small agenda that I have, it's 4 components. It's storage, networking, compute, and management. And that's basically what you do every day, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Right, silence is golden, they say. So yeah, so first off with a little bit of storage. So we introduced a new piece of soft storage for you to use in the VMs, the Ultra SSDs that you can now use inside of your VMs. They support up to 160,000 IOPS. It's better than in premium storage, which we promised to be delivering only 80,000 in the beginning, which we superseded very easily if you do the configuration correctly. They come from 4 gigabytes to 64 terabytes in size, which is humongous. And still nowadays, we know that we keep a lot of data, even in retention and even on VMs. We want to keep those for all reasons, even if it's just the Excels of all the sales guys, right? So for years and years of data, you can still go on here. And we will provision more and more of these things. But of course, if you want to put your storage into the cloud, you need something more touchable. So who remembers the import-export functionality in the old portal? So that's portal version 4. We have a... Who knows the number of portals that we have so far? Anybody dare to do a guess? Not the MVPs. Anybody dare to take a guess? Yes?
4.
No.
15.
No. Actually, yeah, because they constantly do a reiteration and they constantly change a lot of things. But the official account is actually 6. The first portal was just a bare naked HTML page with 2 buttons on there. You could just deploy your endpoint and that was it. So that's the good old days. And then we had something in Silverlight. Yeah, I'm gonna swear a lot today. So, but in the Antares portal, so the blue and white one, where we introduced the concept of app services and all these things, and there was this import-export functionality where you could ship your own disk. Now today we have the Go general availability or the Go live of what we call the project Azure Data Box, where you can actually request a data box. We ship it over to you, you copy all the data, and we ship it back. We even have it's a ruggedized casing. This one is for a small capacity, but we also have larger capacities. We have one for 100 terabytes. We have a fully stroller, so if you want to go walking with your children, this is perfectly to carry them along. We have a fully data box heavy, up to 1 petabyte, and we're probably will be improving that too. So larger capacity, because petabytes count, right? And we also have an edge device. It's an AI-enabled compute device which will do some offloading. This is brand new. It has a capacity of about 12 terabytes. It comes a little bit larger in disking, but you have some storage for some scalability features, which you can just inject into your data center racks, and you can use that from there out to do offloading. So it's a little bit. It's not the same as a Store Simple, because Store Simple had tiering. This is something totally different. So there's one thing not on this list, which is Azure Data Disks. These are disks up to 40 terabytes, so the small ones, and they just ship like a ordinary DHL package, fully bubble wrapped. These things come actually in kind of flight cases, so they're very heavy. So if you drop them on your feet, you're on holiday. I can guarantee you that. Another thing that we're doing in storage, or that the storage team, Vamshi's team is doing in storage, is any Azure file users here? So you all use file shares, right? But you never heard about Azure Files. Or you did? Okay. Who heard about Azure Files? Raise your hands. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So nobody's using it. Okay, so for those that don't know Azure Files is in storage layer built on top of Blob Storage, having a capability of having an SMB interface on that. And you can implement that in either your servers or your PaaS services as an endpoint where you can store shared storage. But with the announcements that they did on Ignite, we have a couple of more new things coming up. First of all, it's easy because you don't need hardware and you don't need file shares to create on your Windows server. Of course, we all love storage spaces direct and all these things to make it easier on ourselves, but you don't need to maintain that machine. So it's actually it's serverless file storage. That's what it comes down to. We have fully SMB3 and HTTPS support on that. And actually, if you look at it, and any sysinternal users here, or yeah. So if you use the live hookup in your PC, you can actually just hard link your sysinternals as a drive into your PC. That's actually that feature that you're using. Yeah? It's an SMB and HTTPS protocol combination that you need. So you need to open up both ports if you're gonna combine it. It's cross-platform. Yeah. But the new things that are now upcoming is actually we now scale out to 100 terabytes. So for the shares, before it was only 5 terabytes. So now we can have file shares up to 100 terabytes. More performant also because we go up to 10,000 IOPS for standard file storage, and for premium file storage we have 100,000 IOPS. So that's pretty sleek if you want to do a lot of file sharing in there too. But the biggest thing is now that we are opening up to AD, because that was the one thing that was missing, unfortunately. We had a great idea, but it took us like, I think it's 3 years now, files, yeah, something like that. But we only had one capability of accessing it. That was pre-shared key and storage account user. And guess what? If you have the key, you have the secret, and you can do everything with that storage account. So you don't want that. So nowadays, you will be able to integrate AD first on the level of management and on the level of creating a file share, and then afterwards with file sync and with ACLing, you can actually create your own NFS-like environments, and you can actually start creating some value there. So that will come somewhere in time. By the way, I don't have any roadmap timing, so don't ask me for that. I can only tell you what I know. Like Krasinovich says, so don't start calling me if you hear this, because we don't have any clue, right? Here we have it. And now PowerPoint doesn't want to work with me. All right. That other underlying layer of storage called Blob Storage. Any hard lovers of Blob Storage here? Still? You only nod very silently. You can raise your hands. I don't bite, right? Even my co-presenter is a little you should be more flamboyant, huh? No, so Blob Storage is a very underestimated piece of software that we have, or a piece of infrastructure that we have, especially because nowadays you can do more with it than just store files on it. You can use it for static websites, for instance. It's easy to set up. You have immediately a full backup with CDN impacted, so that way you can have global reach. Just drop your JavaScript files and your index files there, and you can have a full serverless infrastructure for hosting your websites. Who knew about the static websites? All right, and are you using it? Not yet. So sorry?
Does it now have the option to create this default file? So if in the past you had to point the directory from the particular file, if you want to host something,
Yeah.
so one class is that is the feature of having like inside the folder having a default, kind of like an
Yeah. So now it's a switch that you enable, and there's two files that you need to put: your default page and your 404 page. That's the one that you need to. So what you can do is you just enable the site, the storage account for web hosting, and then you either from Visual Studio or right click. Friends, don't let friends right-click in Visual Studio to publish. We should do all the DevOps way, I know. Or in VS Code, you can publish straight to static websites. It creates a $web folder, which is actually the root folder for any kind of IIS or Tomcat folder for hosting a static website. And then with the needs of CDN, you can actually HTTPS enclose it and have your custom domains. So it's very simple, although it can be complex because of the CDN part, but it gives you some advantage. It's very cheap hosting. For SPAs with no backend processing, and if you need backend processing, just hook it up to functions and you're good. Or just kick off a logic app and you're good. You don't need to do complex things. Actually, hosting a website today should only cost you like 10 cents a month, if you come to think of it. Because functions you get for free for about 400,000 runs in whatever size you want, and storage is actually you will pay a couple of cents only for the storage, and then it's just pointing to images and stuff like that. But it's only static and client-based convenience. We did a lot of work on the security and compliance part, because that's one of the key elements a lot of IT organizations demand nowadays on storage. First of all, can I get all my data there? Well, we have that with the data box. How can I secure it? And how do I do versioning, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? And most of the time, people tend to use a lot of tools for those things. And well, we heard you. So first of all, what we did is there's always encryption, and you can bring your own key now from within Key Vault. So if you want to encrypt, you can generate a Key Vault key, put it in there. You can even hook your certificates in there if you want to, and you can use your own key from the Key Vault environment. This brings you a little bit more granularity and more security towards yourself, because you no longer have the feeling that we are in control. You have full control and full responsibility. This has been GA, by the way, since March this year, but it was a highly requested feature. We also have the interaction and integration with everything which is networking and firewalling. So we now have a fully hook inside of the virtual networks with storage. And that's been there since February. Just as with service endpoints, you can just immediately call your storage through your internal networking, so that way everything can be sealed off from the outside if you have an extension of your data center. You also can have full logging capabilities and metrics on those things, so that's a very useful thing. Also, and by the end of the year, this is in preview. It will probably go by the end of the year in GA, because normally nowadays if we deploy something it takes up to 3 months and then we make it general available. That's a new trend that we're having. You can now use AAD credentials instead of SaaS tokens only. So this is also something, since you're already using an organizational account or an organizational credential, why would you have anything more, and why wouldn't you make it easier yourself and implement that? We heard you there, and there's also full RBAC on container level now, so that you can use that to your advantage. Just grab some water here for a second. Another thing, and this is more from a compliance perspective, is the immutable blob storage. And this is gone GA in September. There you can set retention policies, and that means that once it's there, it cannot be touched anymore, it cannot be deleted anymore, it cannot be done with unless really demanded or requested. So this is all being hooked up there through means of policies and through means of settings that you can have yourself. So this is, if you're working in a compliant environment, pharmaceuticals, banking, whatever, this will help you to maintain a immutable archiving system. Combine that with archive storage, and combine that with even before you go into immutable storage, combine that with soft deletes. You have a full stack of armory against oops momentums in storage environments. Soft deletes, did you guys hear about those, that they are now enabled? Did you see that now today, since last week, there's a soft delete enablement through the Storage Explorer. So you no longer need to do it through the portal, you can already include it through the Storage Explorer too. Interesting so far, or am I boring you? Because I still have a talk after this one. All right, just making sure that you're still alive, and from time to time I ask some interaction, so bear with. Now, any networking guys here? Yeah, kind of. I do routers from time to time, right? That kind of a situation, right? Networking is the second most important facility that we have in the Azure world. That's the thing. Everybody keeps believing that serverless, we don't use all that stuff. Storage, you know, all these three main chapters here, storage, networking, and computing, they're being used everywhere, but sometimes you just don't see it. And if you don't grasp them very tight and don't love them like you should love them, even from a developer perspective, and this is something that you need to take home with you. If you have developers in your organization and they only do coding, make them look at these things, because it's very important that they understand what's happening underneath. Just like you guys need to know what code does. I mean, that's a given. We are no longer the operators of servers. We are all DevOps now. It's a marketing term, right? So for the networking part, we have the announcement of a couple of new things there. We have still our high-speed internal networking with VNets. We have all the capabilities of NSGs and the ACLs that are come on top with that. We still have our application gateways, and we still have our DDoS protection, and we will talk about those things after the break, because Rick and I will do a talk on security, surprise, and those things will be handled there. So, but what we did announce now is a new ExpressRoute feature, the 100 gigabit ExpressRoute, so larger capacity, but also the direct, which does a better functionality. It has your direct hooking that you have. We have Azure Front Door. Anybody heard about Front Door? Couple of guys. Yeah. This is a solution for many of you that don't want to pay a lot of money if you want to stay away from API management, because this is a good counterpart solution. I'll show you some information on that in a second. Also, the virtual WAN, so the virtual wide area network, is now in full announcement. So we have now a full extended one environment where you can do easier hub and spoke interactions, and you can have a better topology like you have today in your own network, or as you know through the own extension that you have nowadays in your own environments, so pre-cloud. And one of the cooler new features is the Azure Firewall. Some people say, why you need a firewall? Well, because we want to make it simple and we want something that scales. That doesn't mean that the ones that we offer to the marketplace are bad. We just want something simple to set up and interact very simple with the environments without you having to have a lot of hassle on learning either a new tooling, unless you already have, let's say, a Barracuda on premise and you want to interact with the same console, then you can still do that. But this is the counterpart. So all these new technologies enable more of these kind of architectures. So hub and spoke is one of the topologies that you see more often, because you have a landing zone where you bring in your extension from your own data center, because we all know that cloud native is only good for those who are able to do that, that can go fully greenfield. Most of you guys are still in a brownfieldish thing or in an extended thing, because you still need to move resources, or you want to see it as an extension of your data center. So for these things we have, with the technologies that we have today, like DDoS protection to protect your environment from the outside, the firewall will control and route your data through it and block what you ruled out, or allows what you ruled in. And then we can hook up with interconnection through peering. You no longer need to do VPN tunneling, just can do peering, which is a lot faster, a lot cheaper too, because you don't need the hardware running in the background. Because a VPN gateway is still a couple of cloud services running in the background, for those who didn't realize it. So the VPN gateways that we have today, if you ever did troubleshooting with the Network Watcher, anybody fan of Network Watcher? So if you do the troubleshooting there and you download the logs of the troubleshooting, you actually get a zip file per instance that you have. And that zip file is actually the naming of a cloud service. It actually has the same naming convention as _00, like we used to know. So these technologies and these architectures will become more and more common now, because we have all these capabilities at hand through the means of these new capabilities. Like I mentioned, service endpoints, for instance, you don't have to go on the outside of your environment. You can stay safely inside and secure everything from the outside. So on the new stuff, Azure Firewall. It was cool when I saw it the first time. We actually have something that can scale without you having to worry about, we have to cluster it, we have to maintain some shared storage, because that's mostly the question that in my days as a consultant, when I did networking, the networking guys always came up to me and said, yeah, but how do you do it when you want to cluster a checkpoint? Or how do you do it when you cluster a whatever appliance you have? Because there's always this configuration files that you need to share. It's a hard thing to do, and we are worried about that. Well, this takes that out of the equation. It can you can set up very easily the capabilities in NAT routing, application-based routing. So you just have tagging just the way you have with NSG tagging, and you can implement it like that. It can filter inbound, outbound, and spoke. It auto scales, so like a couple of other features that we have. Cool thing is that all the logging is centralized, and you have a lot of logging in there. And my advice is always to put all the logging inside of a storage account, which is the cheapest, and also put it into an what we call an OMS account or a log analytics account, because that way with a Data Explorer or with Custo, which is the original name for the query environment, it makes it very easy to write your own queries and create alerts on those, and then surface the issues that you're having. So if we look at the features that you have in there, we have fully qualified networking name filtering, We have tagging, so we just apply the tag and that traffic will be passed on or blocked the way you want it, because that's always the rule that you have, allow or deny. And there's also the default infrastructure rule collection. In combination with the routing that you have, you can force tunnel it through the firewall, so that way you have the same way of interaction as you have on premise. We have full SNAT support. We have monitoring with monitor logging and monitor metrics. And there's network watcher integration. This will improve over time, so knowing that this is still this is the first release in GA. It's a fully fledged environment, but more features will come. So as for instance the Azure security integration with just-in-time access, stuff like that. These are all things that are to come. Okay. Maybe it wouldn't be bad to show you what it looks like when you look at it in the portal of the capabilities that you have. Yes?
How about the version 3 or 3?
For now it's 2. I don't know how far they are along with the 3. So I cannot give you a full disclosure on that one. Yeah, 2 at least. Yeah. Why would we still invest in 1? Right? I mean, a lot of people are still, that's one of the reasons why we also stepped away from the older SKUs of VPNs, because the IKE versions. So we should all ramp up a little bit. Yeah. But if I'm not mistaken, it's at least 2, but I'm not sure about the 3 that I have to look into. So looking at the capabilities, it's very easy to set up. You just need to write out the network that you want to ramp into and the address space that you want. There's one requirement though. It's a little bit like with the gateways. You need a subnet which is called Azure Firewall Subnet. Why? I don't know. I should ask you guys. I didn't get a chance yet to ask them, but I find it a little bit peculiar. The rules that you can have, as I mentioned, is you can have NAT ruling, network rules, and just as easy as giving in an endpoint, giving in the source, and I thought no, it's the other one. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. And giving in either network tags if you have them. So if you're using service tags already or application tags from within NSGs, you can just apply these and these will be available to use. For those who are wondering what these tags are or how you can use them, there's actually a JSON file that you can download with all the tags in there that can also relate to the public endpoints of Azure. So that way you can use them at your advantage to create your own NSG rules too. So if you have a look here, you have all the network rules, so it's very easy. You can just edit it like it's like a little bit row based, and yeah, there's one in there that allows DNS on a peculiar DNS, and it allows if I just turn that off, it will be blocked. It's that simple. So just basic rules. Now in the near future, this will probably come if you have multiple of those. This will probably come with some policy management of. If I can only guess, but these things will probably come because most of the time we try to take a look at what the others are doing, and that way we can have a better yes. Yes, you need to have a separate subnet called Azure Firewall Subnet. So if you have a virtual network, you need to create that in advance. Just like with the virtual network, with the virtual gateway subnet, it's the same way. No, that I just explained. I have no idea. I do know that it has to be a minimum of 25 because of the scalability of your range of your internals. Because you need to scale, so you need to have some endpoints there that will have some load balancing features underneath those things. Okay. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
So in that case, for my real experience, I have to drop that also. So why is that we have to create separate unit for
Honestly, I have no idea. I think it's. You have an idea? I see you laughing. I'm looking at Rob because he probably knows. He's a SQL guy, by the way. He probably knows. I never heard the reason why. Yeah, we can take that offline. So anybody interested? Talk with talk with Rob afterwards. So this is a little thing we do. So we hand off topics so that we can get to the beers earlier. That's a little bit the way we do it. Now, yeah. No, but there will probably be a good reason. But if it's a blocker, if you create an additional VNet with an extended range and just peer it through, then it shouldn't be a blocker. You should see it as a more secure area.
Yeah, what is my, I mean, what was the feedback from the customer that you can create the video theory, but they don't want to have extra VNet because they have to, for example, maybe their policy inside the company that they already have two VNet, they don't want to have another.
Okay. But they do create VLANs, so it's a little bit the same thing. But now I understand your reluctancy to it, and I understand your resiliency to it. But I have no idea why that is. Probably because of failover. I can only guess. So probably because of failover groups or something like that. It must be something like that. But I would at least expect that you could deploy it into a separate subnet and that you have that boundary, because a subnet is a VLAN as such if you do fully hardening of it. But let's discuss afterwards, okay? All right, front door. So who here has...
Still a point about the firewall.
Yeah.
You don't have a roadmap, but compile taking feedback to the product. That if there's any users involved in the networking, what is currently lacking there is user-based firewall, which is available in.
User-based firewalling right now, I have to think. What do you mean by...
I mean, the fact that when the user's identity is known, if there's like a real user behind it,
Yeah.
then the effectively has to be established based on the identity.
Uh-huh.
Network rules or IP addresses.
Yeah.
That is available with the
Yeah, but that's...
real firewall layers,
But that's usually based on a connection-based, VPN-based environment, right? You don't do user-based...
So that even though someone is within a firewall network, if their identity is not correct, you have to establish that this one's not there. Okay, we can take it offline.
Yeah, probably, because,
But with the modern workforce, that's much on the move, mobile, connected with mobile devices or radio or something, then it would be beneficial to have the social travel based on user identity as well.
well, I can take that feedback to the team. I don't think there will be... Maybe they could be open to that, because they also have to be involved with the identity team then at that point in time. So
That's why I mentioned that you look at what other vendors are doing, and that's something that is
okay.
real firewall.
Yeah, I never stood still by that one. It's something that I don't come across that often. But all right, let's take it offline and discuss it over beer or lunch, whichever comes first. Front door. A front door is a routing and proxying for your APIs or your endpoints that you can have. And what it does, you have some POPs that you can use, and it does some. It's a little bit comparable to application gateway, but only it doesn't have all the features that application gateway has on the layer. What is it again? Layer 7. I always have to think. It does more on the stuff. It also has CDN involvement immediately, so it's a much lighter setup than having all the components for yourself. You have the benefits of application acceleration. It also integrates directly with app services, so you can immediately hook that up and use the application request routing for that to maintain your different API endpoints or your API routings. It has a global HTTP load balancing instance, so a little bit like Traffic Manager, but not with all the different load balancing rules that we have there. We can still use that in a combination. There is some layer security here. There's some WAF rules there. They're also based on the things that we know and that we learned from application gateway and web application firewall, SSL offloading, and of course the CDNing, so integrates content caching, which makes your websites more fluently accessible in a faster way. This is a welcomed service apparently. Most of us were surprised because it was well hidden in the caves of Microsoft until a certain point in time. I don't even know whether the MVPs were up to speed with it before Ignite. It's only a couple of weeks before, because but I missed that one, so yeah. Sorry? Okay, see, you guys were. Hey Jeff, good morning. But I know there was a call somewhere in, I think it was mid of August. Yeah.
They first talked about a pre-meeting at Build.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, pre-meeting at Build even. Okay.
But I love that because it's like track man, but without nothing about the DNS rules and things.
Yeah.
The only thing I think is a shame is it's HTTPS only.
Yeah.
Underlying technology should be able to do anything.
True.
So I think
True. Then again, V1 in public service. We've been using it for quite a while ourselves.
yes, it's the service
So,
that stands
yeah.
in front of Office 365 and Microsoft.
Amongst others, because also the Azure portal indeed and some of the things. Actually, we've been running this for quite a while. So just like any other things like Service Fabric and stuff, we've been running these things for quite a while. So hence why we come out with it. If we find it useful for the public, we release those things. Right, and you have also a central dashboard for those things. Compute. Well, today, if you look at the compute offerings that we have, who's been using the portal a lot? For those who use Azure. Okay, so there's still people. I think you still have some work there to do, Alexander. But if you use the portal, what's the thing that you've seen the last couple of months changing a lot? It's when you create a VM. Especially, it started off with the selector of the SKUs, because now we have something like 130 something SKUs. I mean, you cannot put them all into separate blocks anymore because it just crashes your browser because of the loading of all the images and all the prices, especially the prices, because, yeah, you know why. But we have a very comprehensive compute offering, and it's not only what you see on the outside, it's also what we have on the inside. We have humongous beasts now in our data centers that can run almost any workload, from SAP to large, even Oracle instances. We have to admit it, there's a lot of customers still running Oracle. But these beasts, they have like 960 gigabytes of RAM and so many teras, and it's amazing what we're doing there. And the last infliction we call beasts, actually, the servers that we put into the data centers. We don't name them anymore like generation 1, generation 2, generation 3. Now we call them Beast, Godzilla, and so on, because they tend to get so huge. We have a cool collaboration for those who are doing things like SAP We have a cool collaboration now with SAP. For those who saw the Ignite keynote, we had SAP and Adobe both on stage at that point in time. So if you want to run HANA in a very smooth and a very speedy way, we can help you there. Yeah. I know this is a little bit of a sales pitch, but it's not really my cup of tea. But if you're into SAP, there's always people that like to hit themselves. You're really up for that. But one of the cooler things that we now have is that we can also help you with Cray computing, and that's even more cooler. We can have a private offering there to inject that, and it will become more publicly available for you guys to actually have Cray calculations. That's pretty cool. Cray compute, I think there's 2 data centers now that are running that have full Cray computers shipped inside of the data center, and that you can, so that's pretty awesome. So just to show you, we go up from 1 vCPU to 960 CPUs. It's humongous if you want to use that. Memory, 24 terabytes now. That's the mega beast. It's awesome. And 64 terabytes of disk storage. InfiniBand with fully 100 gigabytes support on InfiniBand. Combine that with high-speed networking from the inside and the zone availability that we have. You have a full high-powered data center at your hand. The only thing that's missing is a credit card. Periodly. The thing that we did with the VMs in the portal is also the way you nowadays create VMs. If I go to virtual machines, there's a new way of working. Where's my mouse? Sorry, here. So you load the page and then, okay. So if you nowadays create a new VM, there's also a new way of creating one. You used to have one blade and you have all the tabs in the blade and you just go by them side by side. We made it a little bit more human understandable and human readable, and we now have for every single step, which is important, a different tab. So that way you can go back and forth in all the choices that you have. We still have the chooser there. You can still have the SKUs here, but we make it a little bit easier for you when changing the size. You can either immediately filter on those and make it a lot faster. So it's 212 already. Okay, so there goes my numbers. And as you can see, the choices, they get larger and larger. It's because of the new SKUs that we have with NVIDIA GPUs for all the natural process learning, NPL stuff and NLP stuff, and natural language processing, and all these things that we add for high PC. One other thing that we added to in the compute sphere is confidential computing. We now foresee a trusted execution environment where you have enclaves, where you and you alone are the sole owner, and we support there with TPM chips and all the high security things, and this is really fully segregated from everything else. So that way you can have a fully trusted executed environment. I think and now I'm looking at Rob, and he will be surprised when he looks up. See, I think the managed instances, they are the first to target confidential computing, if I'm not mistaken, to make sure that your workloads in data stay secure. Yeah. So SQL databases, they love these things. So trusted execution environments with data protection. This is a fully environment. For the rest, it's just VMs nowadays. We didn't do big announcements there, maybe on the stack part, maybe on the things, but our dear friend Rick will talk about that tomorrow morning. Yeah. So these enclaves are actually the core business where you want to talk about. Now the largest part that I'm going to talk about for the last 15 minutes is everything which is hybrid and management, because a lot of changes were happening there for those who paid good attention. We already did a great effort in management. We provided you with solutions in OMS, which we then reintegrated in, no, wait, let me rephrase that. We started off with System Center Advisor, which then became OMS, our Operational Management Suite, which is now again Log Analytics. All these solutions are now fully integrated in the same portal. We have all the query capabilities now in the portal from a Custo environment. So we are really doing a lot of effort there to, again, make it easier on you. And there's a couple of new things in that management perspective, which I'm going to show you in a second. First of all, the Windows Server 2019. Since you're still running VMs, or since you still want to deploy virtual machines or machines inside of your own network, Server 2019 is a hybrid environment because it integrates highly with everything Azure related. Not only from an OS perspective, but also from a management perspective. There's a couple of experts here in the room when it comes down to Windows Admin Center and everything which is PowerShell. Talk to those guys. Really, they know what they're talking about. And sorry, Jeff, you too, of course. It's because you're in the background. Don't forget you. And it's really good if you still run your Hyper-V and your hyper-converged infrastructure, because Windows Server there will help you there too. Now, the biggest surprise to most of you probably was this thing, Windows Virtual Desktop. Who heard about the RDMI story? Yeah, that's this. Kind of. It's renamed and rebranded, and it's actually this. So we now offer you a multi-hosting Windows environment which you can deploy from the marketplace in a couple of minutes. Unfortunately, I cannot show you because I didn't get access because I wanted to. No, but the thing is, what they did there is they took all the RDS roles and they put them actually in Azure services, and we run them there as scalable services. So you don't need to deploy anymore your gateway, your brokers, your license service. We do that for you, and we put that in a managed instance. And then you can scale up very easily your multi-hosting and even allow people to do remote apping from within the Windows environment, so they can hook up the apps inside of their own PCs and host your environments like that. If you look at the architecture of the Windows Virtual Desktop, that I can show you. So you have the clients that you can manage. It's either an HTML5 because there is also a web interface for that. And you have the virtual desktop Azure services, which are running indeed the web access, the diagnostics, the broker, and the gateway. Underneath there's a SQL database for all the management layers that we're doing there, so nothing much changed there because you also need that for RDS. And then we have the clients running on Windows 10 Enterprise with the new feature that you can have multi-session there in there too. So it's very fast to set up because it boots a little bit quicker. You can either use the apps directly or you can have full VDI interfaces. It runs anywhere. There's also a hook that you can have onto the Azure AD authentication, so it makes it easier for you to do your user management and your integration into your own network. So that way you can easily scale your VMs and your desktops for your users if you need them. And it's designed for multi-tenancy, so it can cope normally with multi-tenant if your environments were well designed, and if your ADs are nice and clean, because there's always some prerequisites, right? And they can even join into the AAD domain services, so that way you have that hook there too. So from a management perspective and for the setup, it will be easier for you to use. So this is still in preview. It's going to be fully deployed somewhere in the next coming week, so that way you can fully access it too as a public preview. Just bear with, but it was fully announced at Ignite. People say, well, why then not remote app? Well, this is a far lighter solution, a far cheaper solution because of the licensing SKU. Windows 10 is cheaper in licensing than a full Windows environment. But for managing your environment, you still need some tools. And this is where Windows Admin Center comes in. Who's been playing around with Honolulu? All right. Do you like it? Just 2 thumbs up from the back. That's Chip. All right. Anybody else who's enthusiastic about it? Yeah, at least someone. Are you, Alexander? Oh. The cool thing about Windows Admin Center is that it does, and it's not a Windows show here that I'm doing. There's actually real hooks into Azure. It can immediately interact with Azure Backup. It can immediately interact with site recovery, even with update management. You can use it with the automation and the update management solutions that we have from the VM side. So if you look at Admin Center, where is it? Where is my? I have my VM open here somewhere. Here it is. Let me just show you. There we go. Let's see how that works. Yeah, that scales. All right. So you can have your, hey, that's the downside of running a VM, of course. Here we go. So you can have your integration immediately with Azure Backup, and this is directly calling the Backup Vault APIs, looking at all the restore points that you have, looking at all the history that you have on backups, and you can fully back up your state in there, and it's very easy to set up. The only thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that you have an AAD user, an organizational user inside of Azure that can have access in the way you can do backups from the RBAC related matters. And then you can just click away. You can look at your recovery points, so you can either look at your backups here, or you can look at it from a perspective in the portal. If you look at the Vault here, and I had it open, I apparently clicked it away. If I look at Vault, you'll see that this same machine will have a full, it's this one normally, that the backups that we have here, backup items, here we are actually in here, so you can take a look on the last backups that you see. So it's a T2KX WAC, and if you look at that machine, it's actually the same time span, so that's 10:3:17 a.m. That's the same, yeah, that's because of the time zones. There's 2 hours of difference. System state is a little bit different because I had an additional backup there. So it's very tightly integrated. There's more additional things here. You can have in Windows Admin Center, you have PowerShell scripts that can be generated for you immediately. There's a full shell integration there. From the update management, if you look at that, this interacts highly with the solution that we have here for the VMs. That brings me immediately to my next item. Now, where is it? VMs, here we are. That brings me immediately to my next item, which is the management of the VMs. So we made a lot of effort of having all these operation management toolings immediately inside of the blades of the VM, so that you have a one-stop shop for your VM, what you want to do. Immediately do the backup, immediately do the recovery, the inventory and change tracking, which will report back eventually to policies and also security center on a higher base level. So that's something that you need to keep an eye out. So here you can see all the changes that have been going on in my machine. So it's good for change logging and audit logging of your environments to have a good overview of where changes or where updates were applied. Another part of the hybrid is the stack platform. Rick will talk extensively on that, and he can tell you stories. But the cool thing about Stack is that we try to have a consistent offline story there, and that you have a one-stop way of deploying your applications or your VMs the way you do in Azure or you do in Stack. It would be the same, right? You have ARM templates that can be applied to both, and the only thing that they need is the switch of a subscription, and that's basically it, because all the commandlets, they stay the same, all the AZ clients things stay the same, I know, but I'm not going to spoil your show. You can do that yourself. And you can even put that on a boat. For those who know Maersk, the container shipment company, they actually put it on a couple of their boats, and they use it as a disconnected way of interacting with the cloud, and then they load up because of the low bandwidth. They still need the compute capacity and the capabilities of Azure, so they can use one for the docks and they can use one on the boats. If you want to know more about that, there's a great speaker and MVP and ex-Microsoft Rasmus Holt, who's working for those, and he has a great talk on how they did it and how they implemented that. Following up on all the other stuff, well, we have security and management. Nowadays we are highly putting into governance, and one of the new things that we put into effort there is the Azure blueprints. Slightly silently announced, but a really big thing if you want to keep corporate governance seriously. What you can do with blueprints is actually, and I have more slides in here, but since I'm almost running out of time, and you guys really need a break, and I do too because I'm running out of area, is that with the blueprint you can actually recreate the policies and all the management groups and all the other stuff that you need for a governance perspective. You can use that blueprint and recreate it in a subscription or in another environment. Basically, that's the goal. And it works seamlessly with things like policies, RBAC, and ARM templates. And one of the things that I really would like to show you there is also the interaction of a new thing called the resource graph, because that is a meta layer that you can read out and gives you back all the information on your Azure environment, but in the way like you have with the Graph API. So the Office 365 API that some of you might know of interacting with AAD and interacting with subscription management there. It's the same way of using it. So the same syntax, the same way of interacting with it. If you look at the way you cope with it, I opened up here we go, Cloud Shell for that. Unfortunately, I've been talking so long, so that's what you get. Just need to reconnect it. Hope it won't take too long. And it allows you to quickly interrogate with the API in a very fluent way. So come on. So first a little spoiler. So you have nowadays Visual Studio Code inside of the shell, for those who didn't know that. And you can actually use the shell from within Visual Studio Code. If you want to know more about that, he's the expert. So what you can have here is you can save all your files there. So what I did here is first thing you need to do is add the extension to your environment. So that's the graph extension that you need to advertise. And then you need to query it. And the way you need to do it is just do an AZ graph query, and you give your query along in text. So what you can do here is, if you do a summarize count, you get all the objects that are in the graph. So if I were to run this one, you see that I have a total of 388 objects in my subscription. And now I can start by summarizing. Oh, come on. By type. Pity that the shortcut keys for, or do they work? The F8, F5, does that work in code? No, it doesn't yet. All right. Unfortunately. So here you can see now I have service bus 1. I have, let's see if I can find, I have 2 virtual machines running. I have two IoT hubs running, I have 7 SQL Server databases, so that way you can read out that JSON and you can interact with that data to do content management. I'm almost done. So that's what you get when you're first speaker and you're all excited. All right. And then you can just have just a little bit like a SQL query, and a little bit like the Custo query that you're used to, have the same structure, and you can have fully reports that you can generate from there and can automate these things too. So let's see. I think I'm done here. I think I've mentioned most important things. So I mentioned these things. Monitor here, that's also one thing. Unified monitoring is now even more in place. So Monitor is really now the one-stop shop. From desktop, from metrics to logs, everything goes in there. Yeah, and then leave everything else to your reading. I will talk about monitoring in the next talk too, so you won't be missing out much. So, that's it. Yes? Wait for it. Here we are. So these are some of the features that will be coming. And we are implementing it also into Azure DevOps, so that way you can reinforce your blueprints there too and check on that, because it's also a checking mechanism. So what if analysis, that's one of the things that they're working on. Resource locking is one of the things they're working on, but also sequencing. So there's some things on the roadmap. Is there anything specific that you're looking for? Okay. All right. So yeah, don't forget, it's a new service. We just announced it like 1.5 weeks ago. So, all right. I hope you found it interesting. I'll just leave you now for 15 minutes, and then you have more time with me. Sorry, I was so kind enough to offer an additional slot. He could refuse, but for some stupid reason he doesn't. So, all right. Anyway, so thank you for having me for the opening of PolarConf. It's an honor. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned already something and it was interesting enough. So